back.
Hey,
Steven, how are you?
good. How are you doing this evening?
I'm good. I got a lot on my plate, but I'm glad to do this. And so,
Absolutely,
um, yeah, I was kind of like working around some other things, but I'm like, no, I was excited to do this and
for
talk about
sure.
this.
Listen, I'm just glad we were able to get this done in time by the date that we wanted to set this for, just to, yeah, for it to be timely with both of these movies when they were released.
Right. So, for anybody who is watching this who doesn't know, both The Case of the Bloody Iris and Your Vice is a Locked Room and Only I Have the Key were both released in 1972 on the same day, August 4th. And so I'd noticed that when I was working on Your Vice in the doing the Jolly Tally for it, because technically I did Case of the Bloody Iris last year so I could have a video done for Celluloid Dreams' release for it. But as I'm going through, I do this thing where I'm like, okay, people who appeared in previous films, and so I'm like, wait, when did Case of the Bloody Iris come out? And I look and I'm like, they came out on the same day, huh? I'm like, I
Pretty
guess
wild.
if yeah. And so I was for some of the cast and crew who were in both movies, I'm like, I guess that counts as you were previously in this movie, even though they came out on the same day. But I knew I wanted to talk about it, and so I had hit you up a couple weeks ago and was like, dude, do you want to talk about these movies and like compare and contrast them as if oh, let me turn that off. And compare and contrast these films as if we were going to the cinema in 1972 and we managed to watch both of them and just be like, all right, what did you think?
I feel like I tried to replicate that experience as much as I possibly could.
Uh-huh.
It's two very, very stark films compared to one another as far as the aesthetic and the um, kind of the overall like atmosphere. The story is, I mean, and we'll obviously get into that, but it made for a very, very cool double feature. I will say that
Yeah.
much.
And it's crazy because 1972 is also just, I think, the most stacked year for Giallo film releases. And I think there actually are a few other days that there were like double feature nights, but they don't, they're escaping me now, but these are two great ones because I remember in the past it would be like, oh, this came out the same day as as this other Giallo, and it's like, well, this one's clearly the better one, but with this one, these are both really, really good movies, and so that's why it seemed like it would be so fun to talk about them, and especially because of how many people worked on both of the movies, and they got out on the same day.
For sure. I feel like there's a lot of crossover, whether it's behind the camera or on film with a
Hmm.
lot of the actors and actresses. And the more I feel like I've seen these movies, the more and more that you see that they're definitely all within the same circle.
Yeah,
Edwige Fenech is another one that I feel like you see her in a number of these Giallo films, and it's pretty cool to see the reoccurring faces in these
hmm,
movies.
and she has like really different roles in the two movies. Like
Oh, it's
Case of the Bloody Iris is a little bit more what we've seen her in before,
mhm,
and Your Vice is like way more of a departure. It's way more like, oh, that's different.
for sure. Yeah, in a lot of ways, I feel like she's, you know, more of our protagonist in the case of the Bloody Iris. Um, Obviously, that movie is I think she's always associated with the sex appeal, the sleaze to a certain extent, but that's a much different role. Whereas your vice is a locked room, and only I have the key. I mean, she's playing almost like a borderline villain
Hmm.
in that movie, which I thought was on rewatch. I thought it was really interesting to see her role develop in a different way.
Yeah, it arguably is more interesting of a character because also in a lot of her previous films, especially the movies she did with Martino before this one, she's kind of playing a damsel in distress.
Hmm.
And it's a lot of like, she plays it really well. I'll say that.
For sure.
And so it kind of like, when you do see it in some older movies, but not that older, like, again, that's one of the things that Giallo films kind of are known for is they come out in this period where they're kind of subverting expectations, and a lot of the filmmakers are very like forward thinking, and occasionally they'll fall back on more traditional tropes, like the woman is in danger and needs rescuing. And sometimes you watch that and you're like, all right, that's a little it's a little 1950s.
Yeah.
But I always feel like when Edwige Fenech is in the role, it's like this is she plays it just, I don't know, she makes it endearing.
It's interesting because, your Vice portrays her in a way that is very seductive. She's very manipulative. She's playing everyone behind the scenes, whereas, for the case of the Bloody Iris, I mean, I would say that she's in the driver's seat the same way we are, that we're trying to figure out the mystery as to who the mysterious killer is. So it's a very interesting contrast in the roles that she picks, and I don't know. I feel like either way, she knocks it out of the park.
Yeah, there's a reason why she's like, I feel most people's number one female actor in
Oh,
genre
100%.
films.
Yeah, definitely elevates each one of the movies.
So this is what I think is interesting for these movies, like right out of the gate, before we compare and contrast them. Which, well, we can acknowledge that it's not always fair to compare and contrast films because they're doing different things or whatever. But these are both Giallo films, although one is a little bit more like adhering to a standard Giallo, while the other one is more gothic. But came out in the same day. They're both technically Giallo films, so even though some people would be like, "Why are you comparing and contrasting?" I'm like, I think we can find a way to justify this.
There's definitely some overlap with
Yeah.
elements for each film, even though I do like that each director definitely had a different take on their approach, how they decided to go about this.
And this might be jumping the gun a little bit, but I do think Case of the Bloody Iris, maybe because of the connection with who produced it, who wrote it, that it feels like a Sergio Martino movie that he did not direct. And so, in terms of who ended up directing which film, I'm glad that Sergio Martino did direct Your Vice, and I'm glad that Giuliano Carnemeo directed Case of the Bloody Iris, because he brings this unique vision to it, and it it feels like a Martino Giallo, but it also is something different, if that makes any sense.
What I noticed watching the case of the Bloody Iris was that it doesn't feel as graphic in comparison. You can definitely tell Sergio Martino's films, even if you're not super familiar with his movies, he has a very signature style where they're very mean spirited for a lot of them, and we were talking about this before we got on the air, was that in a lot of ways, I think his films definitely have this like signature gritty style to them. A lot of ways I feel like Torso or some of his other films, you can definitely tell like he has like a certain way that he goes about directing. Whereas the case of the Bloody Iris, it feels like it's more aesthetically pleasing, visually very stunning. It's I don't know how to explain it. It's a very gorgeous looking film.
Yeah, and it's funny because I'm glad you pointed that out, because Sergio Martino is not someone that I necessarily initially connect with, like, oh, it's going to be really violent, really gritty, but it is. I think it's because he usually gets overshadowed by other directors like Fulci, who's like
Hmm.
can be way more gritty when he wants to be. And Fulci became way more gritty later on. Like his earlier 60s, early 70s Giallo films are not so bad. And then I think after like Don't Torture a Duckling, he started leaning in a little bit more. But yeah, going off of also what you're saying, Case of the Bloody Iris, the kills are not that graphic, but it feels like it's not trying to go for that. And whether they
No,
whether they didn't have the means to pull it off one way or the other, or that was a decision, it it doesn't really hurt the film, because I feel like what it does have going for it very well is is the actual unraveling of the mystery and the plot.
Well, and I think for the case of the Bloody Iris, that film definitely checks a lot of the tropes that come with the Giallo films. I mean, you have
Hmm.
the mass killer, you have the red herrings, the signature weapon that's used. A lot of those things, that's primarily what I'm looking for. And obviously, at its core, the mystery behind who's the killer. But yeah, I didn't feel like the case of the Bloody Iris was like gratuitous with its violence. It definitely served a purpose. It kept the story moving along as a result of it. Your Vice, I can appreciate it in a different sense because Martino's taking on a grittier style of directing. It makes sense that the kills would be a little bit more like mean spirited, like I was saying. So,
Hmm.
never to the point where I feel like it's getting towards like Fulci territory, but it serves its purpose for sure.
Yeah. I actually had someone recently comment saying that they're gonna. I think it was my overview for Your Vice, or maybe it was the Jolly Tally. But they commented and was like, "I think I'm gonna skip this one on the grounds of I don't really want to watch a cat get its eye stabbed out." like,
That's
I'm
fair.
like, I get it. Granted, it's one of the worst looking like prop animals. Like it's
Yeah.
so clearly fake. You can see the paint from like when they colored the eyes. You can see yellow paint in the fake fur. That's
Can
how
I
bad it
just
looks. But
can
I
I
get
just
it.
say it's not too far off from like the practicality of the dummy drops that you see in some of these films where it's
Yeah.
like you clearly can tell that that's not. I mean, I get what they're trying to do with it, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I think for most of us you can kind of see through that. But I agree.
I
I think any animal stuff, I mean, even with I think we had talked about this before with Cannibal Holocaust, I mean, that's definitely more realistic, and for even for me, I'm not really comfortable with that type of stuff
yeah.
as someone who loves animals.
Yeah. Um when people say like I'm going to avoid that movie, I'm like I totally get it. I've seen it a few times and it never really gets easier to watch.
For which one?
Um Cannibal Holocaust.
Oh yeah.
I've
No,
seen it maybe 4 times or so, but you're just like, yeah, it is what it is. Um, Interesting. Going off of the fake bodies, I think Your Vice has one of the best shots of a fake body falling, and I always think it's funny because with a lot of movies that you either can't really pull off a special effect very convincingly or you don't have the budget for it,
mhm.
smarter movies or smarter directors will be like, well, let's focus on what we can do very well and just kind of
Yeah.
hide the things that we're not really great at. Giallo films, in regards to throwing a body off of a height, 9 times out of 10, they don't give a shit and they're just going to do it anyway. They're like, why not?
Yep.
Why not? All we got
I
to do
know.
is dress up a mannequin and throw it. And sometimes it looks terrible, and that's part of the charm of the genre. And
Yep.
other times it looks not that bad. And both of
It's
these
the
movies,
charm. I would say it's the
yeah,
charm.
it's
Yeah. There's
exactly.
something about that. There, it's like there's those signature tropes that these films have that I think that's what keeps me coming back to them is that
Uh huh.
you have to have a certain level of appreciation for these films like that.
It also kind of feels like at the end of the day they're not taking themselves too seriously.
No. 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 No.
But yeah, I think Your Vice does have one of the better shots of a body falling. It's not bad in Bloody Iris either, but
No.
it's it's more of how it's edited, where you see the fake body falling, hitting the railing, whatever, and then it cuts to like from the ground perspective with like a body actually landing next to the camera, and I'm like, okay, they cut that together very well.
I was going to say, so for each of these movies, obviously you've seen a number of Giallo films, uh, probably eclipsing how many I've seen. And I have to ask, like, where do both of these films fall for you? Like, is this considered like your S tier of Giallo films, or do you think that there's certain maybe like certain reasons why these or for both of these films they might miss the mark?
In the grand scheme of like the entire canon of Giallo films, I would probably put both of these films at the very minimum in an A tier.
Okay.
I don't know if I would. I could see myself putting them in S tier, but S I feel like maybe I don't want to give away like which one I think might be the better film, but one of them I might slip in S. But and this is something I did want to talk about is these movies are both catering to a slightly different subgenre within the genre
Hmm.
itself. And I feel like Case of the Bloody Iris is really adhering to the more like when outsiders talk about Giallo or people who've seen a handful of Giallo movies and they all kind of think that they're all about mysterious gloved killers killing people and it kind of ignoring or maybe they're just unaware that it's like no there's actually a lot and sometimes there's maybe only one murder in the movie and it happens in the last 10 minutes. Sometimes
Hmm.
there's no murder, but sometimes it's dealing with madness, paranoia, it's dealing with other things. But in terms of the very standard Giallo description, I think Case of the Bloody Iris is a really good example, and especially from a director who didn't make any other Giallo films. Like he made a lot of spaghetti westerns before and after, and then Your Vice, I think, is easily one of the best examples of a gothic Giallo. I
Yeah.
just recently saw the Red Queen kill 7 times.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, and so
Was that a first time watch?
I watched it for the first time
Oh,
doing the review, the overview, the Jolly Tally for it.
so fucking good.
I'm actually editing the Jolly Tally for it right now. But yeah, so I'm like Your Vice and Red
Red
Queen are
Queen.
both up there.
Oh, that one's so good. I wish I could
Also,
rewatch that for the first time.
I also have to catch myself and make sure I say the title correctly because I watched like 3 or 4 Giallo films over a weekend and like did
God
videos on
bless,
them,
man.
and it was, and among them were the Red Queen kills 7 times and the Red-Headed Corpse. And so there's been
Oh,
times
okay.
like I exported a video file for the Red Queen and I accidentally titled it the Red-Headed Queen and I couldn't find it. And then I'm like, oh, I mislabeled it as the Red-Headed Queen. Jeez.
I swear, a lot of the titles from the movies, unless you have like very distinct, short titles. I mean, there are some that I even find myself second guessing the
Hmm.
title. Even like when you and I are going back and forth, we're discussing various movies. I'm like, I gotta double check to make sure I'm like actually, saying the title correctly. So,
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm not the only one in that regards. But,
It's
um,
been tripping me up a lot lately.
so okay, because I was going back and I'm looking at Sergio Martino's filmography. So before and after this film, would you consider this one of his best films then for your Vice?
I think yes, because okay, I think Martino's like first 5 Giallo films are like knockouts. Like I think he did not miss. Everyone he hit out of the park, and it's just which ones actually went further when they
Hmm.
went out of the stadium. I think Strange Vice is a phenomenal debut film.
Love that movie.
Case of the Scorpion's Tail. Again, now I got to try and not
I know.
say Case
I
of Blood.
know.
Case of the Scorpion's Tail, I think is a really good jet set. What other subgenre might you call it? I guess you could more just call it a jet set Giallo. A good example of that. Not necessarily one of my favorites, but I don't think it's bad in any way. All the Colors of the Dark, which is often called on IMDb, it's called They're Coming to Get You, which I
Hmm.
don't like that title.
No.
All the Colors of the Dark, I think, is fine. Okay, yeah, no, I think it's great. I do think it's good. I do think it's great, but again, it's just like, I don't like it as much. I think like Strange Vice is like up here, and then the other ones are like just a little lower, and then Your Vice I think comes back up again. And it's, especially for the type of movie that it was going for. I really think it
Sure.
hits it, like it nails it. And then I think Torso might even be either the same level or even higher.
I swear it's so hard because um I think The Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward and Torso might be up there for my favorite films from him.
Hmm.
But there's a case to be made about some of the other films you were talking about. Like, I'm not gonna lie, let me just plug this real quick. So I don't know if this is how you initially watch these films, but
That's how I have that one. Yeah,
oh my gosh,
it's from that.
it's a perfect collection for somebody looking to get into these movies.
Uh huh.
Arrow is like the unsung hero when it comes to their contributions to they released countless Giallo films on Blu-ray. And I know like Torso recently within the last year that got a 4K, which is awesome and it's gorgeous looking. But this is like essential. If you're looking to get into Sergio Martino, this box set is incredible and it's a great starting point. It's not overly expensive. It gets what you
Hmm.
need. And then, if you want to tap into some of his other films, you can always, there's other avenues on how you can get a hold of those. So,
It's a shame that all the colors of the dark you kind of have to go a little outside of in terms of like I forget who I have it from. It's not Shameless. I
I
forget
think
who it is, but
who released that on.
I have it somewhere. But see, I'm like bogged down by like production lights, so I can't really
Oh no,
easily
no, it's
like
okay.
leave.
Was it
But
Severin?
Severin, yes,
Okay.
yeah. Um, and sorry, what was I saying? Arrow basically has almost all of his Giallo films
Yep.
except for that one. Who has do they have Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward?
I believe that's Arrow.
Okay,
I'm double checking right now.
that's, that's the thing. And then all of a
Wait,
sudden
maybe
it's easy.
no. I'm sorry.
That
I
might be
think I might have
Severin too.
misspoke. Nope, you're right. I misspoke. Um, okay. Props to Severin. Props to Severin for carrying other essential Giallo films, but
I was gonna say Severin doesn't always get the credit they deserve.
mm-mm, no, not at all. Um, no, I would say that for Martino, I would consider this film maybe a step down from the other two I mentioned, but it's still I would if we're considering the Strange Vice and Torso as S tier for Martino, probably have to put this in like A tier.
That I actually think is fair. I would say Strange Vice and Torso are S tier,
Mm-hmm. For
and
sure.
I would say that Case of the Scorpion's Tail and All the Colors of the Dark might be like A minus, like maybe B plus. Like again, they're still up there. It's definitely in like a top 90%. You know, or looking at it as like a
Yeah.
score. Like they have a 91, 92%, but in some schools that's a B plus.
Exactly.
School that I went to, that would be a B plus. You'd be like, come on.
um, I mean, and just obviously, there's some overlap, right? But with Edwige Fenech, I mean, the her filmography is insane.
Yeah.
I'm just going back and I'm like looking through here and like some of the more notable films that she's been in. Strange Vices, Mrs. Ward, All the Colors of the Dark, Your Vice is the Locked Room and Only I Have the Key, The Case of the Bloody Iris, Strip Nude for Your Killer, um, $5 for an August Moon. I mean, she definitely had a run.
What's the raunchy one? Top Sensation.
Oh, that's right.
I mean,
Listen, listen. I was texting one of my buddies, and I was just telling him I was like, listen, for back then, she was a dime. Like
oh
I
yeah.
don't know too many actresses from that time that I can like actively go back and just be like, just breathtaking.
No,
As far as her presence and just how you know from this was obviously a time before you had um, plastic surgery and Botox and all this other stuff. So somebody that's naturally beautiful like that, I think you actually have to take a moment to appreciate, how stunning she is. So
that was kind of what I was hinting at without saying it
I'll
totally.
say
Is
it.
that, no, no, no,
I'll,
no, no,
I'll
no. Is
say
that
it.
there's a lot of the Giallo, the divas, the female
Yeah.
actors that people will fawn over. God, I hate some people who are just like, oh, so and so she's so hot. And I'm like, I think you're an older dude who's like
Yeah.
remembering when you saw this in your youth, but
Yeah.
not all of them. I'm like, oh yeah, buddy. But I'm like Edwige Fenech. I'm just like, yeah, no, she like, because beauty standards kind of change. Like what I've been surrounded by growing up is a little different, and I'm not saying any of these other actresses are unattractive, but like I know a lot of people would be like, oh, Anita Strindberg or Rosalba Neri or whoever, but I'm like Edwige Fenech. I'm just like, no, no, no. I think she was really beautiful in her day, and like for me and like my proclivities, I'm like, no, I think she's attractive too.
Yeah, 100%. Um, yeah, it's definitely. I think it's almost like when you see these reoccurring faces for these films, I think it's almost comforting because it's like, okay, there's some familiarity with when these films like they have like crossover appeal, you know, whether it's different Giallo films or Italian horror films. So now, plot wise, do you feel like one of these films is more compelling compared to the other? I know we were talking about this a little bit. Where are you at on it? Like, do you feel like that there's things that work for each of these films, and maybe some stuff you don't care for as much?
Um, in terms of plot, I'll say both movies are pretty solid. There's not a lot of neither of them really has moments that you feel could actually be cut, like they don't really serve anything. Everything it feels they both feel very locked in. And that could
Mm-hmm.
be because Ernesto Gastaldi wrote both of them, that they have like a much sharper focus. Um gosh. I do think in terms of focus, I think Your Vice is more locked in,
Okay.
but I feel like there's less. Like both of them are already very focused. There are a few moments in rewatching Case of the Bloody Iris where I was like, I don't know, like when we go to the nightclub and we're watching the one girl and she's like fighting off, she's challenging men to like and she's fighting them off. I'm like, this isn't bad, and it actually does come up later when she comes
Yeah.
home to the apartment. You're hearing the recording of it,
Yeah.
but I remembered as I was rewatching it, like, okay, this kind of feels like Gastaldi was like, and then we need a scene where a woman gets her clothes ripped off, and
Yeah.
it's
Just
kind of
trying to find
sexy.
an excuse for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I will say that it does kind of feel a little bit like that, and Your Vice doesn't really have as many moments where it feels like this just happens because we should fit one of these in here. But gosh, yeah, the plots are just Your Vice is more it's more about following this woman whose like mind is kind of falling apart, and she's living in this house or this castle
Hmm.
under this abusive husband who has some freaking an Oedipus complex, a strong Oedipus complex
Yeah.
with his mom, and there's murders happening kind of in the background, and they end up happening at the castle as well. So
Can, can I ask you, as far
yeah,
as like the characters in Your Vice, do you feel like they're more complex? Like it's a very
yes,
layered, at least how I perceived it, it felt like a very layered uh, plot and like set of characters and their relationships compared to the Case of the Bloody Iris. Um, and I don't know, it was just very very like the whole movie. I'm trying to really like hone in on these characters, and you're just really trying to figure out where like the direction of this is going, because everyone is either plotting behind each other's
hmm
backs, or they're doing like this shady shit basically on the low, or becoming increasingly paranoid as a result of like essentially abuse.
yeah,
um it deals with very very different subject matter, I guess, is what I'm getting at, compared
right,
to Case of the Bloody Iris is just more your traditional style giallo and at more
yeah,
face value.
right. And I do, but that's the interesting thing because I think Case of the Bloody Iris still is like a very good example of a really good like standard giallo that
Hmm.
nails it. But it's not trying to be too deep. Like there are a few things in there. Like Edwige Fenech's character is dealing with the trauma of being married to a guy in like a cult who is, you know, sharing her around, and then
It's a interesting angle to
yeah,
that.
yeah.
I'm like,
Not
ain't,
sure
ain't
how. not sure how like necessary it is for the story, but it does introduce her husband, who is a red herring. And then George Hilton's character has like the what do you call it, hemophobia?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, afraid of blood. And again, it's very interesting, but it's also like, I think that was an interesting addition that didn't necessarily need to be there, but I'm glad it is there. But no, I definitely think Your Vice is, in terms of the characters, the way it's written, the themes, I think it's way more layered, way smarter. But that's also because, I mean, again, they're both Ernesto Gastaldi.
Hmm.
Your Vice also had Saro Scavallini, who co-wrote it, and Luciano Martino came up with the story. But it's all taken from Edgar Allan Poe, and I think
Yes.
when you're starting from that level of adapting Poe, there's already these themes of guilt and madness that you'd be a fool to kind of just throw them away in favor of the plot stuff that you think is cool. It's like, no, you're doing a disservice to Poe if you don't try and incorporate these themes.
Yeah, and that's another thing is that, there's it feels like there's a lot more symbolism, especially for your Vice, where obviously you're toying with like the cat symbolism and the motif of that being like essentially in a lot of ways like a plot device. I mean, that's there all the way up in a lot of ways up until the very end. But it's definitely interesting. I see what you're saying. I mean, the Edgar Allan Poe influence on this. I mean, you don't see that too often. I can't really think of like any other Giallo films that maybe have taken influence from his work.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm wrong, but
There,
um, I thought that part of it, once I did a little bit of digging, was interesting.
mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of other Poe stories that influenced Giallo. I think as a whole, sort of like Murders in the Rue Morgue. I mean, not that a Giallo ever had murders being performed by an ape, but that mystery in that story is
Yeah.
kind of Giallo esque. But in terms of just like when you get to the end, it's like, whoa, what a
Hmm.
reveal. But in terms of Italian horror that all kind of adapted the Black Cat, the ones that come to mind are Lucio Fulci's The Black Cat,
Yep.
which is not a Giallo, but very interesting. And then Crimes of the Black Cat, which I also watched in that same weekend that I watched The Redheaded Corpse and whatever. And that was interesting. I might actually go back and cover it because there is a Cauldron Blu-ray release of the movie, but I've never bought from them before, so I'm
They're
just
solid.
on.
Yeah.
There's okay, good,
Yeah.
good to hear.
Yep. So
Um,
they had last year, they had the Houses of Doom box set from oh my gosh, was it Lucio Fulci and Umberto Lenzi? It was like two films from each of them, and then they have a Lamberto Bava box set that is set to be released anytime now. So they're definitely they don't skimp on their releases.
okay. Did you see Crimes of the Black Cat?
I have not. That's one
Okay.
that I haven't had a chance to see.
It's not really related to Poe. It's more of just how can we. It's it's a little closer to Black Belly of the Tarantula in
Okay.
terms of kind of using an animal within the killings. It's pretty cool. It's a clever little thing that's again probably reads better on paper than in how it gets adapted. Like, wow, that's very convenient that all that worked out, but that's a lot of Jalo. It's just plot convenience. I was thinking about that when I was rewatching Case of the Bloody Iris when what's her name? Marilyn gets
Yeah.
like
Yep.
stabbed like in broad daylight in the middle of a busy street or busy like sidewalk, and I'm like, that's pretty convenient that not only did the killer like have the balls to do this, but they actually conveniently got away without causing a scene.
Well, it's like, listen, there's a lot of things I love about Tenebrae, but that one scene where John Saxon, doesn't he get stabbed in the middle of the like what is it like? It's not a park, but it's like the middle of like this center of a city, basically. I'm
Yeah.
like, how would this work?
No,
Like,
and it's funny because I always think of these two. I always think of those movies when I watch one scene. So when I watch Case of the Bloody Iris and I see that,
mhm,
I think of Tenebrae. When I watch
yep,
Tenebrae, I think of Bloody Iris because it is so ludicrous. Like, really, like, nope. And I think with Bloody Iris, I mean, again, I don't want to assume the movie is trying to be deeper and have something to say, but I did wonder as I was rewatching it, like, are they trying to make a point about people, being caught up in their own lives and the hustle and bustle, and that they are unaware of horrible things happening in front of them? I'm like, I don't know. Does the rest of the movie actually justify that, or is that me just trying to make the movie seem smarter?
no, I think that there. I mean, there were a few things I took away, at least on rewatch for Case of the Bloody Iris, is that they definitely explore some themes. It felt like, um, and you see these in other Giallo films, but like the sexual repression, versus liberation. These are obviously ongoing themes I think are kind of touched on over the course of the movie. And then you obviously have themes of voyeurism, and we talked about paranoia, which is these are classic Giallo elements that I feel like
Mm-hmm.
you can't deny. I mean, they're pretty common with a lot of these films, but I I think that it's a little bit deeper of a film than maybe on surface level, and on rewatch, I can definitely appreciate this film as it's got something to say. Um, Now for this film, I guess for either of them, do you think that these are good entry level films for someone just getting into the subgenre?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I think they're yeah. I
Okay.
feel like I'm gonna retread the same ground, but no, they're both like Bloody Iris is, like I said, really good at just being a very kind of standard Giallo, checking a lot of the boxes that you come to expect, and Your Vice is a really good example of one that leans more into the psychological aspect, and
Yes.
even by the end, it doesn't even it's like it but it still has murder, it still has murders going on. It's not like one of the ones that are more very very psychological, like Eye in the Labyrinth or Footprints on the Moon, which
Hmm.
it actually is. No, it's still got your killings in it. It's still got your standard black glove killer in there wearing the hat and all that. I remembered what I was gonna we were talking about, like sexual repression or like judgment, like that type of thing.
Hmm.
And I, upon rewatching Case of the Bloody Iris, I'm like, it's interesting the attitude towards the lesbian character, who
Oh yeah.
is it Anita's? No. Oh, Annabella Incontrera, I think, is who's playing her. But it's funny because it's like you've already got the two judgmental old people who live in the apartment block. You've got the old lady who has like the disfigured adult son who's obsessed with Fumetti Neri books, and then you've got George Regaud's character, who's her father, and she mentions when she's being interrogated that, like, hey, can you like keep it down about this, because my dad's like he's a little old school and doesn't really want to he doesn't want to be reminded of this or know
Yeah.
about this. But the detective, he, like in his questioning here, he's kind of like, yeah, I noticed that you put this ad out or whatever, and it's like I was kind of wondering, like, come on, why are you trying to look for a girl? Why don't you try and find a nice guy or whatever? And I noticed that even more and more the times are changing, and the opposite sex, they're also not looking for girls anymore. And like it was just this really weird, like the level of misunderstanding I thought was funny. It's like it's one thing if the character is like, I just don't, but it was like
Yeah.
it was very much treating it as like, come on, you're doing this as like a weird hobby. Like,
It's
can't
just a
you just find a
phase.
nice guy? It was like, dude, she's
Yeah.
gay. She's not
Yeah.
looking for a guy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I think some of the themes that they touch on in some of the Giallo films, like, there's aspects about it that definitely feel like push the boundaries. you know, especially with like, you know, the girl on girl relationships and things like that, you know, for the
Hmm.
time. It felt like it was pushing the envelope, but there's also there's also some aspects about these films I don't think have always aged as well.
Hmm.
You know, it like the scene with the housekeeper at the beginning of Your Vice, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't,
They, you know
you
what?
know, and I get it, like I get it to a certain extent because of the time that this is taking place, but still, I was like, oh, I don't know if I would be including that in the movie.
But I didn't really think about this until just now, but both movies actually have characters that make very like off color comments. And in Your Vice it's way more, it stands out, like kind of
Yes.
remember, we both know what that thing,
Yeah.
what that
Yep.
moment is. Do you remember what it is in Case of the Bloody Iris? When George Hilton goes to talk to the gay photographer guy, and he's like, what about this one? She's black but not too black. I'm like,
Oh yeah.
whoa.
I forgot
Like,
about that. Yeah.
dude.
It does. I think that, and I can't help but wonder, like, if it gets lost in translation a little bit, you know, for
Hmm.
when we're getting these films, or if in the context of when it's being filmed, you know, is this supposed to imply something else? But the way it comes off when we're watching it, I'm just like, I don't know if this is, you
Yeah.
know, really best suited for these movies, no matter how old they are.
But what is also interesting is going back to what I was saying about like a lot of these Giallo directors were more forward thinking, is it doesn't
Yeah.
feel racist in terms of the movie is racist. It actually feels like
No.
it's just a good reflection of this is the way people behaved and thought.
Yes.
And so it doesn't feel like in either movie, it doesn't feel like the director or the writer is like, you know, approaching this in the wrong way. It feels more like, no, this is the types of people that they are.
Yeah.
Whether they are consciously aware of what, what they're saying, kind of what it sounds like. It's like, this is the way these people would be talking 50 plus years ago.
For sure. And that's something that I almost have to keep in mind because you can't hold it too much against either of these films if there's things that just don't, like I said, maybe they haven't aged well, but, you know, of the time, I think that you have to kind of give it some grace in that regards with some
Hmm.
of these comments that they make. But, you know, I think that kind of going back to what we were saying, I think that both of these films, you know, if you're getting someone into Giallo films and maybe outside of like the more common recommendations, you know, your Lucci or Argento films, I think that the Sergio Martino, I think, is a great starting point for any of
I
his
do too.
films.
Yeah.
Yep, and then the Case of the Bloody Iris, I'm not gonna lie, I think that this is a film that if someone's looking to get into the subgenre, I think it's a good entry point. It's not
Hmm.
the plot's not too complex. It hits a lot of the tropes that I think are essential for Giallo film, and I don't know. It's just cool to see, like, you know, within the last couple of years, this film is getting more love. I think
Hmm.
finally the level of respect that it deserves, thanks to this 4K release.
Yeah.
Yep, yep. From
Yeah.
Celluloid Dreams. Listen, they have like the Midas touch. They're 2 for 2 with their films so far. It's a smaller label.
Hmm.
Their releases take a little bit longer to get out there. You know, obviously there was a little bit of time between this and Short Night of Glass Dolls, but I can't deny it. This film looks stunning. I was blown away the first time I saw this movie, and just that was probably for me. I think was it last year? It was like a top 3 4K for me out
Do
of everything
we
that was released.
do we have an update on Black Belly of the Tarantula?
I was just talking about this. I haven't heard anything.
Because they were saying coming soon, but I'm like,
It's
they
been
ended
coming
up
soon
doing
for a
short.
little bit.
Yeah, they ended up going, we're gonna do Short Night
And
first.
it's okay. I mean, maybe it's for the best because I
Hmm.
thought I had heard something about them getting additional material that they would be able to use for the Black Belly of the Tarantula.
Okay.
So if it benefits the transfer and what they're able to use, then I think it's worth the wait. And we got something anyways in the meantime, so
Yeah.
it's just kind of, you know, flip-flopping releases. But I do wonder when that's going to come out.
I was going to say, I'm really curious to see what they're going to do after that, because the 3 films that they've got so far, Case of the Bloody Iris, Short Night of Glass Dolls, and Black Belly the Tarantula, are all really good Giallo films.
Mm-hmm.
And Bloody Iris and Black Belly are both really good, like more standard Giallo films, especially coming from directors who either only did one Giallo. I'm trying to think. The director of Black Belly is Bianchi, I think, and I don't remember if he made anything else. But Short Night of Glass Dolls, some people will say it's not. I'm like, why? Why? Because it's more like conspiracy culty. Like that's just kind of Aldo Lato's style. Like even Who Saw Her Die has like a, this web, this conspiracy that is being unraveled. But
It's such a good movie.
it's Aldo Lato also for a hot minute like just never missed. But he only made like 2 in the early days, and then he did Night Train Murders. And I have Night Train Murders from Blue Underground, and I need to rewatch it, but I just remembered when I watched it just thinking like it was not at the level of those 2 other films.
No, I think it's a much different.
It's like way grittier, right?
It's a different style of film. I wouldn't consider that like on rewatch. I don't know if I would consider it a true Giallo film. It's more of like it feels like a riff, or like a riff on Last House on the Left, except it's taking place on a train. And those movies are more like revenge. Those
They're
type of like a different type of subgenre, not really Giallo.
Yeah. Revenge. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember watching it going, oh, this is one of those movies.
Yep. But yeah,
fun for the whole family.
I don't know, maybe. No, it's
a Rob Zombie family.
Yeah. I definitely would be interested to see what they decide to do next, because if you're 2 for 2 with these releases so far, and then you also have the Black Belly of the Tarantula on the horizon, I don't know. I mean, you're going to have to land something for that 4th one, whatever that ends up being. But I'm sure, as you know, there's a handful of Giallo films that haven't made the jump to 4K yet, and you know how rights situations lapse, or sometimes they don't get picked up by certain labels, and
especially harder if you're not Argento, Bava, Fulci.
And we've gotten a lot of that on 4K anyways. So if anything, it gets me more excited about the movies that haven't gotten some type of notable release, because like Case of the Bloody Iris, I mean, I think for a lot of people, they had never heard of it till this 4K came out. Mm-hmm. So good on them for, really putting this in the spotlight.
I wanted to go back because I had a few things that I wanted to talk about, and we did already start hitting a lot of these, but I was like, oh, let me go back and just hit the ones. So I don't remember if I completely did mention this already, but just for those keeping score at home, both of these movies have the same producer, which might be the biggest tie, which is Luciano Martino, who's Sergio Martino's brother. And I had forgotten that until I was rewatching Case of the Bloody Iris, that it said produced by Luciano Martino. And I'm like, that's why this feels like a Sergio Martino movie. I think like everything else, it almost feels like he was supposed to make it, and then maybe he chose a different project or something, but it definitely has that feel. And then both have Bruno Nicolai as their music composer. Both have Ernesto
very
Gastaldi.
underrated. Very underrated as a composer. You don't really hear a lot of people bring him up. I feel like Ennio Morricone is always the one that, gets put out there as far as like, that top composer for these films. But
and what's really cool also with Bruno Nicolai was he was a lot of the times, if you go to any of those movies, those Giallo films that are, or even non-Giallo films, but films that Ennio Morricone composed, usually in those same films, Bruno Nicolai was the conductor. So he was still working on the music. He just wasn't necessarily writing it. but like that's really cool.
Very
And then like,
interesting.
yeah, so it's like he was working in Morricone's shadow, and then occasionally he would get a film himself.
I'm going back and looking, and some of the films that Nikolai has done. He's done Eyeball, The Red Queen Kills Seven Times.
That's a good soundtrack. That's a really good
Yes.
soundtrack. The track that plays during the kills in that movie is very similar to what's it called? The song in Your Vice when people are getting killed. They both have this like like just very pulsating vibe to them.
Um, trying to see if there was other. Oh, he did All the Colors of the Dark.
He also did the French sex murders, but he was mostly recycling music for that movie.
The Case of the Scorpion's Tail. Wow, that's incredible.
I think the ones that really stand out the most in terms of his soundtrack, I think, are Your Vice, Red Queen. I don't know, but yeah. So if we're talking about which one has the better music, I think Your Vice. Like, I think that soundtrack is like it's solid. Not just is it good, but the what is it, a harpsichord that's playing
Yes.
in like it fits the vibe so well. Like there's not a single piece of music that's out of step in Your Vice. And that's not to say that there's music in Bloody Iris that, you know, doesn't work, but it's just kind of like what we were saying, like for the one that's more of in vein of being like a more typical generic Giallo and one that's leaning a little bit into the gothic, this one nails the gothic
Oh yeah,
sound, but also keeping it Giallo.
for sure. No, there's that's tough. I would probably have to give Your Vice the edge as far as the soundtrack. Um, it's kind of hard when it's you got the same composer, and I feel like that both scores are very fitting of both films.
I'll say that Your Vice definitely, like if a few years were to go by and I hadn't rewatched either of these movies, I feel like I'm definitely going to remember tracks from Your Vice more. Like I said, that harpsichord theme that plays every time we're kind of in the castle, and then Deadly Race is the name of the track in Your Vice when
Okay.
people are getting killed. Like there's a lot. There's a lot of tracks from different Giallo movies that I'm like, I the movie's over, I go out of my way on YouTube to find that piece of music, and I'm like downloading it, love it, and so
Do
that
you
one is
think
definitely one I love.
do you think that these films get proper representation for their scores when it comes to like physical media? Because I don't
They did,
they did? Okay.
they did, because there would be
Okay.
like you would get like a lot of them like, they sold the actual soundtracks like
Okay.
records of them, and one movie, I'm trying to remember which Giallo it but was it Vinegar Syndrome? Some one of the video boutiques released not the movie but the soundtrack, and it was something recently. It might have been Your Vice. I know it was in a movie I covered in the last like month or two, but I remember thinking, "Whoa, that's interesting." Like they definitely did not do a video release, but they actually did a re-release of the soundtrack.
That's crazy because I know for a fact I've seen obviously Dario Argento's films that have gotten some soundtrack release, Lucio Fulci, but I feel like that there's like a lot of underrepresentation for the soundtracks that have come from other maybe like I don't want to say lesser known directors that did Giallo films, but you know how it is. I think there's a lot of brand recognition when it comes to Argento or Fulci. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, I definitely, I'll have to definitely take a look into that. I did not know that was being put out there.
Let's see if I can find it.
I know Mondo for a long time. They were really good about doing some Italian horror. soundtracks, like back in like 2015, 2016. Waxwork has done some releases, but
Was
that
it
was more Italian horror.
like was it Delirium? It was some movie I did recently that there was like I was coming across like a full on soundtrack for it, which was like that's really cool. Mm.
So, with either of these films, very, very different tones to both of them. What do you think the impact these films had on the Giallo subgenre or maybe other movies just in general? Do you think that one was a little bit more impactful than the other?
I feel like Your Vice would have gotten more recognition. I feel like it would have gotten more notice, and that might have affected gothic leaning Giallo films moving forward.
Hmm.
There obviously was a lot that came out right on the heels of it. Like Red Queen came out, I think, a week or two later. Murder Mansion, whether you want to call it a Giallo or not, came out again, I think, like the day after.
Hmm.
So there were a fair amount, but obviously they came out right on top of each other. So it's not like it actually influenced those movies in any way. I would think so. I don't really have any proof for either one, but I will say that Case of the Bloody Iris, the elevator kill, seems to be homaged is not the word, but you know what I mean. There seems to be an homage to that kill in Brian De Palma's Dress to Kill.
Hmm. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Okay, yeah, because I remember when I first watched Dress to Kill, I was thinking, "Oh, you've seen Case of the Bloody Iris, haven't you?"
It's interesting because I'm sure the more Giallo films that you've seen over time, like you go back and you revisit some of these American movies, and there's, especially with De Palma's films, like there's
Yeah.
definitely some influence, in various ways that's put into his own work. I just think that's fascinating
Hmm.
because you just don't see a ton of directors, like more American directors, that really channel that the way that De Palma did.
Yeah. The most, I think, the most obvious like moment taken from a older Giallo movie and put in a newer American horror movie is Hatchet for the Honeymoon. The like kind of opening narration that's like in the character's psyche as he's
Hmm.
going about his day is like almost entirely recreated in American Psycho.
I could see that.
And it's
Yeah.
it's like same activities, same like in your head in his head narration, and obviously there's a lot of things that are different about it, but when I watched Hatchet for the Honeymoon for the first time last year, I think, I remember thinking this is really similar to American Psycho, and then I looked it up and it was like, yeah, no, a lot of people have noticed that. Like,
Okay. That's interesting. I'm gonna have to go back and watch um, each of them just to really
mhm.
compare them. Um, yeah, I think that this was a really, really cool double feature because it made me appreciate both of these films in their own way. I hadn't seen Your Vice in a long time, so having a chance to obviously rewatch The Case of the Bloody Iris within the last year, this is my second time watching it um, since getting this 4K, and then being able to rewatch Your Vice, it just really makes you appreciate each director's craft and what they brought to the table.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know, again, I keep coming back to it, but I think Sergio Martino is a director that just does not always get the credit that he deserves. Like, I think in a lot
Yeah.
of ways, he should be up there with Argento and Fulci, and yet for some reason he's not.
I think, gosh, cuz it's so hard to replace Argento, Bava, or Fulci. But that's why I always say, like, maybe he's not top three in most people's eyes, but he's definitely, I think, at least for me, on the Mount Rushmore because it's four directors. But I'm like, yeah, no, he's on my Mount Rushmore. It'd be Bava, Fulci, Argento, Martino. Yeah, but that's the other thing I always kind of bring up with some people is like, as great as Argento is and as great as his great films are,
Hmm.
he had a lot of movies that by comparison you're like, huh, well, it was good, but it was no Bird with the Crystal Plumage.
Yeah. I
But
also think if we're talking in the conversation of directors that don't give credit or they don't get the credit where credit's due, Umberto Lenzi is another one where his
Mhm.
contributions and he has a very diverse filmography for the movies that he did. I mean,
Yeah,
it ranges everything from your Italian horror films all the way to Giallo films, and
cannibal films.
yep, that's another one.
He also did City of the Walking Dead, I believe
Yep,
is what it's called, which is what
yep,
Tarantino credits him as being like he made the first like fast moving zombie movie. Like everyone
yes,
says, "Oh, 28 days later." And he's like, "No, no, no. No, no, no. It was an
Nightmare
Italian
City.
movie."
Yep.
Was it it's also called Nightmare City, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Or okay, I was like, are these two different films or okay.
Yeah.
Um
He definitely. I mean, if you're looking at it um, from like the scope outside of, yeah, obviously, I think Cannibal Holocaust is the most notable uh film in the cannibal subgenre, but I would argue that Lenzi, he put out more films than oh my gosh, I'm totally blanking on what the director's name. Giro
Deodato?
Diodato. Yes. I'm trying to think. He did Eaten Alive, Cannibal Ferox. So he did City. Oh my gosh, I can't talk.
I think I've only seen Cannibal
Nightmare City.
Ferox in terms of the cannibal movies he did.
They're again, they're not for everyone. He did Man from the Deep River. That's another solid one. But
I found Cannibal Ferox like I had it on I think a couple months ago, at least a couple months ago,
mhm.
and like I watched it. It was kind of more of like background stuff, but I remember like watching like okay, it's fine. It's got some interesting stuff in it, but as fucked up as Cannibal Holocaust is, I actually do like the plot. I do like the whole framing device of what's going on. It's just it has real, animal brutality in it, which is the if
Well,
it didn't, I feel
I
like it
agree.
obviously would be a much easier watch for a lot of people, and I feel like it would get more of the praise that the movie does deserve because it also has a lot to say. It's about, you know, because
Well,
he made
who's
that.
the monster?
Yeah,
It's
and
I mean, who's I mean, the way that they portray it obviously is that the cannibals are supposed to be like the sadistic ones, but then,
yeah,
by the end of the film, I mean, in a lot of ways the humans are not, you know what I mean, like
the,
the journalists that are going there to investigate. Everyone's human in that film, but
um,
yeah, it's crazy. And what would you consider that? It's like one of the in a lot of ways, it's almost like kind of like the first found footage.
it is. Yeah,
You know?
it's the first found footage movie, and my one of my favorite movies of all time. One of my favorite found footage movies is Man Bites Dog, and they both
Oh,
have a
okay.
very similar theme about like consumers' desire for like violence and what journalists will do to get that. And they both are very similar. I mean, obviously, like Cannibal Holocaust, they're like staging these events so that they can film it and then sell it. Man Bites Dog, it's just how complicit they are in what's happening, and it's like, they're losing
Both
their journalistic integrity of like staying away, and they're actually getting involved, but it's all for the sake of getting a story that they can sell. And they both do a really good job of kind of turning that lens back on the viewer and being like, this is what you like, and you are just a horror fan, but this is kind of what's going on in the media because with I don't know exactly what was going on for when during the making of Man Bites Dog because that was like 1992 in Belgium, so I don't know if there was
okay.
a lot of similarities, but for Deodato, when he did Cannibal Holocaust, it was like he was coming off of the heels of the Years of Lead, and how, oh, like they would be like filming like a person shot dead in the street, like bleeding out in the gutters, and that's the stuff that they just kept replaying like throughout the day, throughout the week, because it got more eyeballs on the screen, it got their ratings up, and
Very exploitative.
very exploitative. And so
Hmm.
that, when you think about that, Cannibal Holocaust all of a sudden kind of feels a little bit like, it's a little, I don't want to say it justifies it totally, but it makes sense because it's more than just this guy wanting to make this brutal exploitation film. It's like, no, he actually had something to say. And then a lot of people factor in parallels to Vietnam, because that was the same thing going
Yeah.
on with the Vietnam War and the American media, what we were seeing coming back. But yeah,
It's definitely a movie that if you only look at it surface level, you're going to look at it as just okay, it's disgusting, it's a cannibal film, like how can somebody watch this? But if you really dive deeper into it, it has a lot to say, and it's a film that I think has aged really well with the messages that trying to convey to the audience. Um, it's I would say that by today's standards, I think that film has more to say than than a lot of the horror films that we get nowadays. So in that regards, I can appreciate the cultural impact it had and what Deodato was the message he was trying to get across, from that movie.
it's kind of
Um,
crazy because it's like, who would have thought when like either of us first saw this movie that we'd be saying, no, I think the movie has actually aged very well.
Oh, it's I've had this conversation within my circle of friends, and we talk about the movies that just were at the time. I mean, they were just hot topic issues
Just
with the films.
obscene.
Oh yeah, you had Faces of Death and Cannibal
Mm-hmm.
Holocaust, and
Mondo
the
Kane.
yeah, oh yeah, like the films that were banned in X amount of countries, and it was like these video store staples that were you were almost like scared to rent them, you
Mm-hmm.
know, um, but even to a certain extent, I remember Zombie. Zombie was a film that I remember hearing about, when I was getting into movies and just how graphic it was, and I've seen that countless times now. At this point, do I put it on the same tier as Cannibal Holocaust? I think no. I think that they're very different films and the messages that they're trying to get across. But
Mm-hmm.
you just don't really have movies like that anymore. So graphic it's banned in all these countries. I mean, I don't know.
It's also really hard to like, for brutality or violent graphic nature in a movie. Kind of hard to compare one that's using special effects versus one that's like, why don't we just film them cutting open a tortoise or a
Yeah.
turtle?
I mean, if you're going to take something that's more recent, I mean, if we were to take the Terrifier films, and
Mm-hmm.
as much as I can appreciate them for what they are, and I like them, but if you were to take that and you were to take it back to a video store in the '90s, I mean, that would have labels all over it with how graphic it
Mm-hmm.
is. It's I think in a lot of ways we just are a little bit more I don't know, desensitized to it now.
Let me share this with you. So you know how like, I think like a lot of Giallo films, especially at the '60s, '70s, they weren't
Hmm.
too graphic, not in a way that was actually like very visceral and disturbing. Like, oh my god, that actually looks real. I always think that New York Ripper is the one that always stands out in terms of like really going for it, really going for the violence, really going for like the like gore.
Hmm.
Crimes of the Black Cat actually surprised me because there is a razor kill in the last 10 minutes of the movie, and it's literally up there with New York Ripper. And
Now you got me wanting to watch this.
it's just so funny because there's a lot of really corny stuff in that movie leading up to it where you're like, oh, this is one of those movies that's just kind of like, okay, it's a little silly, it's not
Yeah.
really that violent. And then you get this last kill where it's like, woman is in a shower, person comes in with a razor blade and they just or a straight razor and just starts cutting them, and it's just like the way how it's doing like cutting into flesh. And I I I just remember watching it like, okay, I did not expect them to go for broke in the last 10 minutes.
It's
So,
it's interesting. Every now and again, you get films like that where it's completely out of left field, where they will include some type of like gore or some really graphic sequence. Um, but yeah, I would have to say, I mean, New York Ripper is definitely up there. I mean, I would even say to a certain extent, like Torso. I think it's just the tone that movie has
mhm.
just feels like very mean spirited, and it's just really graphic and not maybe it doesn't hit quite the heights in the New York Ripper, but
It's also
um,
there's like a 10-year difference or like a 9-year difference between the
yep,
two movies. But
yep.
yeah,
Yeah, those films, those are the ones that always stick out to me as far as the ones that are a little bit more gratuitous with the violence.
hmm
Yeah, I think that there's, for both of these films, if somebody's looking to get into the subgenre, I think that these are both great starting points. Are there other similar films that you feel like would be a good next step if someone's looking to, like, they've watched both of these films? Where do they go from here?
maybe it's because I just saw this movie, but I feel like a logic like if you add Case of the Bloody Iris and Your Vice, maybe this isn't exactly what you would get out of it, but watch Red Queen kill 7 times.
Yep. Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of other directions you could go, but they both kind of combine similar things. There's a lot of fashion involved in Case of the Bloody Iris. There's a lot of gothic stuff going on in Your Vice. You get fashion and gothic, you get Red Queen.
I think that is a great next step with where you could go with it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And it came
if
out
you're
14 days, I think 2 weeks after. I think Red Queen came out like like less than 2 weeks after these movies came out.
I mean, I will sing the praises of that film left and right because I love that movie so much.
Red Queen,
Um, yeah. Oh yeah.
yeah.
Yep. I'm trying to think of like The Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward. I think is another one that's, if you're looking to explore Martino's films. I mean, that film is
hmm
another one that I just would probably put up in S tier.
Yes.
Just Giallo films across the board. Um, Trying to think of like other films that you could really branch off of, like The Case of the Bloody Iris. Are there ones that are more similar in tone?
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know why I'm blanking. It's so funny because it's like I drown myself in these movies week after week, and then sometimes all of a sudden I get like, huh. Maybe it's because I'm like really overthinking this, and I'm trying to come up with like the most perfect answer. But I mean, you could do Black Belly the Tarantula. You could say I
Mm-hmm.
think of Black Belly as like it's trying to be a Bird with the Crystal Plumage clone. In the same way, also Crimes of the Black Cat is also trying to
Mm-hmm.
be a bit of a clone, and they both stand well on their own 2 feet. But gosh, like a movie that's close to Case of the Bloody Iris.
I was thinking, hear me out. I mean, two that I was thinking of were Death Walks in High Heels or Strip Nude for Your Killer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Just not, obviously,
It's
it's
been a
not going to
long
be.
time since I've seen Strip Nude for Your Killer.
Both of those, I feel like there's shades of The Case of the Bloody Iris with those films. But, again, I think that these are better starting points. You could kind of work your way into some of these other recommendations that we had as a result, um, depending on the direction you're trying to go. Because I think that there's a number of different ways you can go if you're trying to get into these movies.
I think there's two ways to think about like going into, well, there's a lot of ways, but two ways that I'm kind of thinking of that are almost like different sides of this binary is do you do you go down a direction of stuff of Giallo films that are more familiar so you can kind of get a better understanding, like watching your more standard, like Bird with Crystal Plumage, Deep Red, Case of the Bloody Iris, like watch enough of these ones that are very similar? Or do you go the route of, no, you should be changing it up. You should, don't get used to one type of movie. Watch one that's very psychological. Watch one that's that like I'm really enjoying that I've started doing these like unscripted movie reviews for the
Hmm.
like the forgotten Giallo films that I've been covering, because if I can just find it somewhere, watch it, do a quick little 20-minute review on it or whatever. But I'm watching movies that I probably never would have watched, and Devil in the Brain is like one that that was a damn good movie. And like I got
Hmm.
a friend from my hometown, she was like messaging her and she's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, I'm watching a movie for my channel." Da 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 da. And she's like, "What is it? I'll watch it too." And I'm like, I don't know if you'll like it. She
Yeah.
watched it. She was like, "That was a really good movie." And I'm like, "And you've never even seen a Giallo film, and this is not a great example for what a Giallo film is." But yeah, I think
At least it only goes up from there.
yeah, and that's
You
the thing
know?
is, it's not even a bad movie. It's actually very well written, but it's kind of like I said, it's some of them are just they're not murder. Who is the murderer? Maybe there's a murder that happens in the beginning or that happens at the end, but Devil in the Brain, I would say, is in that same kind of pool that is like Footprints on the Moon.
Hmm. Well, and I think what you made a good point, because I think for both of these movies, the Red Queen kills seven times feels like it dabbles in elements you get from both of these films. Because I was trying to come up with some other ones I felt like might be a good fit if you're trying to branch off from your Vice.
All the Colors of the
Outside,
Dark also is a little
yeah, yep,
similar. But
yep.
again, it's kind of like Martino's movies are not. Gosh, that's the funny thing is they're so different, but in the same way, they're all Martino.
I could see the more psychological side of things. Lizard in a Woman's Skin
There you
is
go.
one with like the paranoia, um, that side of things. Definitely, you're going to get more of that with that film. Um, Trying to think of some other ones. The other two that I felt like maybe you could, if you're looking for more focus on like like a female lead, I would say The Perfume of the Lady in Black is another good one.
Still haven't seen that one yet.
Oh,
I have
it's
it,
really it's really
but
good.
it's like 78,
70
right? Or
74.
oh, is it 74? Oh, okay, then it'll
Yeah.
be coming
Yep.
up soon. I probably will end up watching it in the next 9 months, maybe,
We'll have to
or a
revisit
year.
that one.
We'll see. Um,
um, or The House with Laughing Windows is another good one. I
that's
don't know,
love that one.
but would you consider that as accessible as these? I think it's
I
more
think
like
so.
really? Okay.
I think so because what Laughing Windows has going for it that some of these also have going for them is it's not so much that it's got all these really engaging because for a lot of people who are especially our horror fans, slasher fans, we find our way into the genre from the more slashery type ones, and
Yeah,
we get
I'd
hooked
agree with
into
that.
these like these murder set pieces. And if it's got good music and it's got good writing and a good reveal, then we're like, oh, cool, on board. But some people get a little too familiar with that as what Giallo is, and then they watch a movie like I said, Footprints on the Moon. They go, that was boring, and like, well, the genre is more than just that. But um, I think Laughing Windows is good because it's a bit different, but it's also a lot of these movies have just really good mysteries that kind of pull you in. Where even though it's not giving you all the murder set pieces, it's still feeding you enough to keep you engaged and keep you scratching your head and going like, okay, what is going on here? Okay, all right.
I think the one thing that stands out to me with The House with Laughing Windows, it's not as sleazy or erotic. It's more like an eerie slow burn type film, and it's set in a more rural setting compared to a lot of these films,
Mm-hmm,
because a majority of them take place in like the city,
mm-hmm.
or like a mansion, or certain settings like that. Whereas House with Laughing Windows is almost like kind of outside of the norm that we
Hmm.
typically get.
There's definitely way more urbanization, and I think that kind of
Hmm.
ties into the themes that a lot of them are pulling on. But then, because it's Italy, excuse me, there's also small towns and there's countryside, and so there's a there's certain. It's kind of like daylight horror. It's like it's not that it's rare, but it certainly kind of creates a certain category, a new like subgenre.
Hmm.
Like you'll get yeah. I'm saying talking about like daylight horror, but yeah, like the rural Giallo films. The ones that always come to mind are like I think the one that comes to mind ahead of Laughing Windows is Don't Torture a Duckling.
Yeah, that's a
And
really good one. That one is, I mean, you would probably agree that's not, it's heavier subject matter
mhm.
for that type of film. I don't know if that's always one that I recommend. Like if you're just getting into the subgenre, if that's something that I would say right off the bat. But that's just me.
Yeah, well, it's like again, like some people don't really can't do violence towards animals. Um, that and Who Saw Her Die deal with children,
Hmm.
and more so Don't Torture a Duckling because it's not just like one kid goes missing, dies. It's like they're the primary targets.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah,
definitely like a test the waters.
for sure. Yeah, you. I think when you're getting into this, and I don't know if this was the case for you in your experience, but you kind of find out of the films that you see certain things that you like that you're looking for out of these movies, and other times I think you're I don't know, there's just some movies where I just don't know if I would really revisit all that often, just because
Hmm.
either maybe the story wasn't as compelling or the twist wasn't all that. And for I think for every time you have these highs in this subgenre of film, I mean, there's, you get the occasional lows.
There's a good amount of lows. Like
I'm I'm
I always
I'm trying to be kind about it,
no no
but
no.
yeah.
I always try to never say any of the movies that I review are bad. I'll always try to caveat it by saying like I didn't care for this movie, but
Listen, if
I
if I
always
can
try
put
not to offend anyone's opinion if they actually really liked it.
if I can put a positive spin on Jaws: The Revenge, I think that anything's possible, because I made that a challenge. I was doing a video review on that, and I was trying to see how forgiving I could be about that movie, and
Is that the fourth one?
that is the fourth one where they're in the Bahamas,
Oh
the,
gosh, it's been a minute for that
the Shark
movie.
Mafia.
I just remember the poster, the person like standing on the boat with like the
Yep,
spear gun or whatever.
yep.
Um,
It's not good by any means. I mean, I find myself this time of year, especially knee deep in summer. Like I always, around the 4th of July, I always have a reason to revisit those movies. But
yeah.
um, yeah, I don't know. I especially around January, like I try to take that whole month and really dive into giallo films. Winter is more that setting that fall winter is usually when I watch more giallo films.
Hmm.
Summer's like my more favorite
You got
slashers,
you got to do your summer horror, your camp
camp slashers.
slashers, your
Yep,
creature features. You got to get outside more for those
100%.
ones.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
that makes perfect sense. Uh, Real quick, I would ask because we've got to start moving along towards like the big topics, but the titles of these two movies. What do you think? Do you think the titles? Obviously, some of them make more sense than others, but what do you think of them?
I the case of the bloody iris. I like it. It is what it is. Like you obviously you understand it as you go along.
Hmm. And the
Um,
alternative title is like, what are those drops of blood doing on Jennifer's body?
yeah, I believe so.
Something like
Yeah,
that.
I
Which
I'm glad they went with what they went with.
yeah, and I think I never watched. I don't recall, but I was watching it today in Italian, and I don't recall ever watching it in Italian. I feel like I have before, but I noticed that the inspector actually says that, and it's supposed to be like a quote from a poem, which I'm like, is that
Yeah.
true? But that was the first time that I caught that, and then like that's where the Italian title comes from. Okay, but yeah, I think Case of the Bloody Iris is a much better choice for the title,
For sure.
and it makes
And
sense.
then Your Vice, I like it on paper. It's a
Yeah,
mouthful.
yeah,
I always find myself like second guessing myself if I actually said the title correctly.
yeah.
Even when we were trying to figure out this episode, and I mean I definitely get what they were going with the title, but yeah, I don't know if it
It's
would have been my choice.
it's. I'll put it this way: it's a cool title. I like it. Does it actually fit the movie? Yes and no.
Hmm.
It's just the funny thing about it is it's just ripped from Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward, and they're like, "Oh, that's an interesting thing we have. Let's just use that as the title."
Hmm.
And it doesn't not fit, but it definitely feels like they kind of crowbarred that in a little bit.
Yeah.
And then they're like, we'll find a way to justify it.
So, are we good to dive into the endings?
Yeah, I was gonna say the last things I think we should talk about are what we think of like the styles, and then the
Okay.
reveals, and then we'll just
Okay.
come out and say what we think,
Why
which
don't
we think
why
is the
don't
better.
we let's cover the style. So you're talking about stylistic choices for the film?
Yeah, how the style serves the story, the characters, anything like that, because they are pretty different. But I'll say both movies. And it was good that I rewatched Bloody Iris. I would say because with some directors like Umberto Lenzi specifically,
Hmm.
he bombards you with style in a way that doesn't necessarily enhance like the story or anything that's going on. It's
Yeah.
also like whoop, 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 like multiple crash zooms of the same thing. Like, all right, I get what you're
Yeah.
going for, but it feels a little heavy. Case of the Bloody Iris and Your Vice, I think the styles work really, really well with the story they're trying to tell.
I would agree.
And
Um,
like,
the Case of the Bloody Iris is very, very visually appealing.
mhm.
I think that's the one thing that the 4K transfer uh, really caught my eye with was just how beautiful the film is. Whereas, I feel like it matches that aesthetic of what this film is about. Whereas, Your Vice is it's a really gritty feel. Like it makes that whole movie makes me feel very uneasy when you're watching it. It's not very straightforward with the direction of where things are going. Stylistically, I think if you're trying to make like myself, if you're trying to make someone feel very uncomfortable watching the movie, it definitely does get that point across, and it captures that gothic feel with it
Mhm.
too.
I think it does a really good job of. I think both of them do a really good job of conveying the deteriorating psychology of the main female leads.
Oh,
Your Vice is more focused on that in the story, but and Bloody Iris, like when she's doing the photography session in the beginning, and it's like the lights are kind of doing this like kaleidoscopic thing,
yep.
and then she starts hallucinating, and I was like, that's all really good. And then
My those scenes kind of reminded me of Lizard in a Woman's Skin with
yes,
like the very
and Strange
unreliable,
Vice.
yeah, yep, very unreliable, like distorted type look. Um, but that's actually a really good point with Your Vice because you're not only getting the performance from the actors and actresses of these deteriorating relationships and the level of trust that everyone has with one another, but it's also it stylistically for how it's directed. It displays that even set pieces, the design, editing choices, things like that. So that's actually really really great way to kind of word that.
Hmm. I'm trying to think. Like, it's really hard to say that one nails the style more so than the other one, especially after rewatching Bloody Iris because it had been a year. whereas I watched Your Vice, I think like 3 times in preparation for like,
Hmm.
covering it a week or two ago. It feels like it does have like a bit of a cheat code because of the gothic setting, the Edgar Allan Poe themes. It kind of feels like a lot of that stuff is already backloaded in, and it gives it a little bit more freedom to do things that don't feel so out of place. And I feel like Case of the Bloody Iris needs to be very deliberate with its stylistic choices. When it does something crazy like a weird camera effect, when it there's a lot of stuff that does jump out to me, but it doesn't come off as you're just trying to be cool or you're just trying to be flashy. Like in the flashback when she's in like the orgy, and it's there's a part where it pulls back really far and it's shot through like some art thing, whatever, and all the
Yeah.
characters are moving in the background. They're moving closer towards Edwige Fenech, and it's like they're all out of focus. And this grate or whatever that you're looking through is the thing in focus, and like stuff like that is really interesting, because it actually can convey a lot. It's not just that it looks kind of cool. It's like you could. This is why I really like getting into cinema and stuff, because
Oh, 100%.
whether that was a deliberate thing by the director for this reason, you can easily throw so much of like, oh, it's out of like all this stuff is out of focus because she's kind of like not in her body in terms of like what she is complicit with doing with this cult with her husband,
Hmm.
stuff like that. It's a little, I don't know. I just think it's really cool.
Okay, so how did you feel like with obviously we both really appreciate these movies, and in closing for both of these films, did you like the reveal, or was it obvious to you who the killer was by the end of it, or were you left guessing, trying to piece together who the killer actually was?
I know my answer for Bloody Iris. I have to kind of think about Your Vice real quick, because Your Vice stacks a lot of shit on in the
Oh,
last
it
15 minutes.
it does. I don't know. Here's the thing. I
It's a
don't,
Gastaldi thing. He just stacks stuff.
is okay. Before we get to that point where we discuss like the identity of each of these killers, do you think one film does it more effectively than the other?
Yes.
Which one do you prefer?
In terms of the reveal,
Yeah.
Case of the Bloody Iris has one of the greatest reveals in
Okay.
Giallo, I think.
Yeah.
I think
I yeah.
I think it's what's so interesting is that, like I said, Ernesto Gastaldi will stack things on and he'll throw things in there and he'll have a reveal that you maybe didn't really need. Maybe it actually kind of convolutes things a little bit. And somehow, Case of the Bloody Iris pulls it all off in a way. Like, for example, the guy who's sneaking into the rooms who you're like, oh, it's the killer.
Mhm.
You find out, no, it's actually a really weird adult son of the older lady who lives, up in there. And he's got this fascination with the Fumetti Neri magazines, and he's very lonely, and he's, intrigued by seeing all this sex around him. And so he kind of has a desire, but even though he's harmless for the most part, he still has these desires. And so that explains why this person has been sneaking into the rooms. And then when you find out who the killer is, that he's like, yeah, I saw him sneaking in, like standing over my daughter. And that's where I got the idea to dress like him. And his reason is that, there's too much sex. It's all corrupting my daughter. There's all this stuff in that movie, and it kind of throws a little bit at you, but it actually all works. It all works. And I did think this was a funny thing when I was rewatching it, where you see the girl making the phone call, and then she starts walking to the apartment, as this person in a car is following her,
Mhm.
and you see them put on gloves. Or no, they don't put on gloves. They don't do that until the elevator. But you see them driving, and I remember like wanting to discuss this, that a lot of times in these movies, when you don't know all the pieces, what everything means, the movie will feed you something and you don't really know exactly how it fits in or what it means. But then when you know and you go back and you start rewatching it, you realize like that damn near revealed it. The killer driving, he has very clearly has old man hands. Like
It's very, and I agree. You have to tiptoe that fine line
mhm,
with how much you're giving away, like how much, like clues or anything like that. But yeah, I agree. I think that they were very careful about that, because
mhm.
I think if it was too much, then you know, I don't know, people might catch on to it a little bit quicker.
It's like the perfect amount of red herrings and misdirection, and it's the way the pieces are introduced, the way they're teased, the way that it's all resolved. I would not say that. Yeah, Bloody Iris is like it's just doing too much. It's trying, and I've said this a lot for Gastaldi. Like I think he's like easily one of the greatest writers for Giallo,
Hmm.
but he does have a knack for throwing a little bit too much at the end and making things intentionally misdirecting, sort of. So this is just a Giallo thing in general, not necessarily like a problem Gastaldi has, but I don't like when a Giallo will like reveal the killer's motive at the very end in a way that is not really set up or something that you couldn't have easily predicted, and it feels like it's done just to be like, haha, even though everything was pointing to one of these people, it was actually this person for this reason that we're revealing right now. Haha, you didn't think it was going to be that. And
Hmm.
that doesn't make a good reveal, to just be like, haha, we got you because you didn't think that. And it's like, well, you didn't set that up. So how could I have guessed that unless I was
There's
just,
there's no real payoff. I think if you
yeah.
if you were to do it that way, versus if it's carefully orchestrated where it keeps you guessing with red herrings all throughout, and you're towards the end, you're like still trying to like piece together who it actually is. I
Mhm.
get what you're saying.
Yeah, and like a lot. I'm trying to think of all the ones I did recently. There was a few that did that in the end, where I'm like, I hate it when they do this. Um, um, Red Queen kind of does it.
Yeah, I don't think it quite lands the same way these films do with it.
Red Queen
Um,
throws a lot in the final like 10 minutes. That's like, what? Why? But
I
I
know.
still enjoy it. But that's an example of something I'm working on recently that I'm like, oh yeah, yeah. It kind of throws a little too much at you in the end.
I think that if you're, I don't know, it's so tough because I keep going back and forth on this. I feel like I prefer the case of the Bloody Iris the way that it's as a whole. I feel like the film just works better, as far as like from start to finish. It doesn't. It's effective in the way that it gets you to the reveal
Hmm.
and isn't trying to again throw too much at you. I think that that would be my only criticism towards the ending of your Vice, is that there's a lot going on, and
Hmm.
if you're not carefully following it, you're going to kind of get lost with the reveal or understanding what exactly is going on. At least
Yeah,
that's how I remember how that's how it was like my first time watching it, and
I
I
did
was
kind of feel that a little bit too. I think the first time I watched it.
yeah.
It also kind of does something that Martino had previously done in Strange Vice, by revealing that this killer going around killing people is actually just a random like sex maniac killer, but now these other killings that are going on are somebody else who's like using these murders as like a way to do copycat killings,
Hmm.
which it worked. You know, it's one thing where it's like it worked for Strange Vice. We let you get away with it, and you're like, why are you doing that again? Why are you doing that
Yeah.
again? The It's no surprise really that Edwige Fenech is playing, both. What are the husband and wife? I forget what their names are right now, but it's no surprise really that she's playing them and she's trying to manipulate them in order to get things. And you find out that she's trying to she's trying to get the jewels that
Oh, she's doing a lot of manipulating.
yeah, and it's
Yeah.
very transparent. It's not like what? It's like yeah, no, like they were both just horny and impressionable. Um, the the reveal that Anita Strindberg's character had actually murdered Luigi Pistilli's character's mom, that actually kind of works. And
Hmm.
this and the realization that she has been playing the victim this whole time so she could eventually get her like kill her husband. I'm like, that works. Okay.
Hmm.
It's not I don't know how like genius it is, but you're like, okay, that works. They did kind of set that up. The one thing though that definitely feels like, it just felt a little extra was Ivan Rasimov's character and his involvement.
Yeah.
Like,
It.
you see him and you're like, who is he? And then in the end, it's like, oh, he's her secret lover, who then she
It.
kills off like
It
5 minutes
feels
later.
like. Yeah, I agree. There's a part of that role that I think could have been um, fine tuned a little bit with the reasoning why he was there, and just maybe like the placement of having him in there as a character, because I was a little confused. I'm like, there was, again, there was a lot being thrown at you by the end
Hmm.
of the movie where um, I don't know. I think it could have been done a little bit better, and maybe that's one of my complaints.
A little cleaner because it definitely feels like it did a
Yeah.
good job setting all this stuff up, and then it definitely feels like from the moment that Edwige Fenech takes the jewels and like leaves, and it's revealed that Ivan Rasimov and Anita Strindberg are like lovers.
Hmm.
And then when he like sabotages the switchbacks where she crashes out and her and what's the lover's name, Sergio I think, or Dario,
Yeah.
they both die, and then she ends up pushing him off the cliff. I remember just feeling like, okay, I feel like we spent all this time setting all these things up, and I feel like we're just kind of like rushing it. It almost kind of
Yeah.
feels like, hey, we got like 5 pages left. You got to just wrap this up. I'm like, okay, because I was gonna explain how he actually was tied in with like that guy's mother, and this is how it's like, no, 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 just cut it, just wrap it up.
Listen, if there's one thing that you could take away from this is that the allure and the sex appeal of Edwige Fenech it transcends cinema. Like, I swear, because it's just crazy to me, like that, especially in that role. She was doing a lot of like she was playing everybody basically to get
Mm-hmm.
what she wanted. And again, it's very different from her role in the case of the Bloody Iris. So um I don't know, it's cool. It was I liked her, and I definitely liked that this role was very different for her.
Mm-hmm. I will say I don't like her hair.
No. No. No.
I don't
No.
like that little
I
short little
I
bob,
remember
whatever.
the first
I
time
was like,
watching it,
she wearing a
I
wig?
had a double take because it doesn't look like how she traditionally looks in most of the films I've seen her in.
Yeah.
Um, but you know what? Listen, I think that her her performance outshined that haircut.
That
I'll
is the
leave it at
really
that.
interesting thing is that despite being she is a principal character, but she doesn't show up for like 30 something minutes.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, like she doesn't show up for the first act. Um, she arguably has way more to dig into in this role than in
Hmm.
the vast majority of the roles she's done before that, where like I said, it's mostly being cast for being like sexy and being a damsel in distress, and this actually gave her like, yes, you're sexy, but you're using that sex to manipulate. And
Yes,
I think she just ate it up. I think she was like, finally, I don't have to just be doing the whole like thing anymore.
I know. And I have a deeper appreciation for her as an actress after seeing her in a number of films, and to see the diversity that
Same.
she has, over a number of films, makes you really appreciate it. It's just unfortunate. I just don't feel like unless you're like really into these type of movies, there's not this greater appreciation for her as an actress really outside of that. I mean, I don't really ever hear anyone talk about her as an actress,
Hmm.
to be honest. But I don't know.
No,
I think she's phenomenal. So
yeah, she's well. A lot of these performers are. I feel like they're only really known within the sphere of Italian genre cinema.
yep.
It's like, sure, maybe they did Poliziotteschi or spaghetti western, but it's all still mostly like
Well,
this.
George Hilton's another one where I mean he's like a mainstay in a lot of
Hmm.
these films. So again, it's to see a lot of these reoccurring faces in these films. I mean, for us, it's like you have that recognition, but you know, outside of that, I don't know how known any of these actors or actresses are. You know,
Hmm. All right, Steven, which is your overall favorite?
I've been going back and forth on this entire episode. Um, I'm gonna have to go with the Case of the Bloody Iris.
Hmm.
That as a whole is I get more out of that movie. And that's not to say that Your Vice is a bad movie by any means. I think I just connect with the Case of the Bloody Iris a little bit more. But again, these movies are equally like in my eyes. I mean, I would consider them S tier as far as Giallo
Hmm.
films. So is that really, you know,
Right.
I don't feel like I'm like really leaning heavily one over the other like that. But
Yeah.
what about for you?
I I've definitely have also been pivoting because I feel like initially Case of the Bloody Iris was always one of those ones I really liked in like, in the last 10 years, especially
Hmm.
because it's more of a deep dive. Like you really have to kind of get into the genre to come across that one. Not as
Yeah.
so much as like some of these other ones that, I'm talking about, but still it's not necessarily mentioned right away. And then even when I watched Your Vice for the first time, and even when I was rewatching it, I think there was always like yeah, I do like this, but I don't know if I like this as much as like a lot of Martino's other ones.
Yeah, I agree.
I, but then rewatching Case of the Bloody Iris, okay. As much as I love the reveal, as much as I think it is very well written, I I don't know. Your Vice, I think, is more focused. And I think, like I said, in terms of the style and the music, I think everything is just perfectly catered to what it's doing. And in terms of like rewatchability or like which one am I going to enjoy more? I mean, of course, I'm going to enjoy both of them. Your Vice might peak it, and like these might switch for me on day to day, but I feel like Your Vice right now is like just this one that's slightly higher. And again, when I'm talking about like which one is more focused, I was recalling how in Bloody Iris we get a lot of scenes with the like the police in Your Vice are present, but we don't get a B plot with them.
Yeah.
Back at, and we get a lot of B plot stuff with the detectives in Bloody Iris. And granted, it is fairly entertaining and it's a lot of comedic stuff. Like the one guy is just the biggest dork lighting the cigarette backwards. The inspector collecting stamps. I was noticing as I was rewatching it today, like, okay, see, this is slightly unfocused, a little bit. But again,
I could see it.
all goes
Yeah.
towards the charm still. But I,
It's so tough because I think you could catch me on a different day out of the week and I
mhm,
might tell you that Your Vice is a stronger film out of the two.
yeah,
But any of these films like you're not really picking a bad Giallo film to dive into, and I think that that's more important takeaway out of it is that it whether you're new to the genre or you've been a little bit more seasoned with these films and maybe you're trying to like diversify the films that you've seen, maybe you haven't seen these movies, um, no matter what you can't go wrong with either of them.
true. It's a good day either way,
Yeah.
and it's a double feature. It's
Yes.
pretty good. So,
Yeah, that's
guy,
a perfect way to spend a nice Saturday evening. We'd be watching both these movies together.
I can't imagine what it would be like to be a young dude going to the cinema in like Rome or Milan or whatever and watching these movies like on the same day. Like, gosh.
We'll have to find another double feature to pair
Hmm.
up, because I think that this was a great way to dissect both these movies, and just really makes you appreciate when it's all said and done how phenomenal both of these movies are, and just how important they are
Yeah.
for the giallo subgenre.
Like I said, I know there are other double feature, like there are other Giallo film like couplings that came out on the same day, but it's never going to be this close in
No,
terms of quality. It would be like, oh, the Two Faces of Fear and whatever, and you're like, I haven't even heard of that one until I was like doing deep dives. Versus this one is like a very well known one, but this one is, I just think like, I
we'll
don't know if
have
there's
to
ever going to be another example of that.
even if they're not necessarily out on the same day. I think we could really find some movies that are somewhat similar in tone, or try to pair them
Hmm.
up, and see if we can have them go head to head, and see which one comes out on top.
I also think that's a good thing for anybody to comment and leave in. Like, if you guys
Yeah,
enjoy this format of us comparing and contrasting Giallo films, give us some dueling titles, and we can
I've got
pick through
plenty of
those.
other ones I could dive into up there. That's why I have them. So if there's
Yeah,
ones that anyone can think of that they would like to see go head to head, that would be
no, but
it'd be pretty fun.
this would be really fun. This, I think, this would be a really fun thing to do. This just felt so natural. Like, oh, dude, they came out the same day.
I
That's
know,
so
I
cool.
know. As soon as you told me that, I'm like, okay, we have to make sure that this comes out before before that
Yeah,
date. So I think we mission accomplished.
yeah. Well, thank you for meeting up and doing this, and I hope
Always.
everybody enjoyed this.
Yeah.
Where can we find you?
So you guys can find me at After Hours Video. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, you name it. I'm also a co-host for the Beyond the Blood podcast. You guys can find that in all podcast platforms.
Nice. I am Tanner Leeser doing the King and Giallo. You can find that on YouTube or Instagram. I'm very active on YouTube, Instagram. I need to find more things I can upload because it's just hard to to constantly do YouTube uploads and then find time to edit for Instagram as well.
100%.
But anyways, yeah, thank you for doing this. This was our second podcast together, and I look forward to doing more.
Yeah, we'll catch everyone on the next one.
All right. Well, thank you for watching. See ya.